It's no secret Auburn needs to score more points this season, but is 28 points per game in conference play too big a hill for Hugh Freeze to climb? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend and partner in crime, Caesar Walker, aka C-Dub. Talk a little bit about Auburn's offense. Today we're talking about points per game and whether Auburn can get it together offensively and reach what should be a very low mark of 28 points per game to win some games here in 2025. Caesar, let's jump right in here. Before we started recording, we talked about that points per game in conference play. Auburn averaged a measly 19.1 points per game in conference play, which just wasn't enough to get it done. And they lost a lot of games where they could not exceed even 24 points. How does Hugh Freeze turn this around in 2025?
Yeah, I think this year, man, you can't have QB controversy, number one. There was a point early in the year where was it going to be Peyton Thorne? Was it going to be Hank Brown? People had their ideas of who should be the QB moving forward. And I think in the midst of that, throw in a whole bunch of turnovers earlier in the year, Auburn beginning to dial back its playbook as the season went on. You hope that going into this year, you have QB1 solidified with Jackson Arnold. You have some continuity there, a rapport with receivers, a different offensive approach, and the way you attack defenses, as well as reduction in turnovers. You're going to see Auburn begin to move the football a lot better. That's at least a hope, at least, that they move the football a lot better in year 3 than you did in year 2, Mike. And I think that's going to give you opportunities to actually score more, especially when you get in the red zone. Auburn was terrible in the red zone last year. And so if you're able to improve upon those things, you can see Auburn begin to hit that 28-point average a lot more in SEC play.
Yeah, look, again, I want to make sure that we highlight for our listeners on podcast that Auburn's number last year was good for 6th in the SEC. That was 27.8 points per game, but it was artificially inflated, Caesar, by some really, really large numbers in some games that they played here against Alabama A&M, 73 points, 45 points against New Mexico. And then you had 48 points versus UL Monroe, and then 43 points against Texas A&M and a 4 OT game. So, right. Again, if you look at just in regulation, which is where they're going to have to live, just not scoring enough points to win games. As a matter of fact, you average 28 points per game in conference play, and you might actually win every single conference game you played last year, which sounds crazy. That's a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, Caesar. So when we see these preseason lists come out and Auburn is high on a lot of people's preseason predictions, it's not hard to surmise how they got there. Essentially, you're looking at what they did last year. You're thinking, hey, did they upgrade at quarterback? Are they better at wide receiver? Is the defense going to be just as good? And if the answer to all those things is yes, combined with the schedule that we see them have, it's hard to say that they're not going to be better in record this year.
Right. And I think, too, again, the first half of the season is going to tell a lot. I think you've done a few shows where you've talked about what are the different scenarios of what Auburn can do depending on what games it loses versus the games it wins in the first 6 games of the season. But, yes, Auburn at times, despite its offensive struggles, they looked pretty promising at times, right? And you would have amazing drives, but you turn the ball over, Mike, right? Or you'll move the ball down the field and you'll make an error in a particular down that stalls the drive. Like Auburn, you saw a lot of that with Auburn at times. When you're between the 20s, Auburn was moving the football, but when you got into the red zone or you have a costly turnover, it would stall out drives for them. And I think, again, cleaning up those types of things. There was a moment last year where you were wondering, was Hugh Freeze and his quarterback on the same page? If you correct those types of issues, Mike, I'm expecting that should yield you at least one more score to your average in conference play, which should put you close to that area of that 28 points per game mark in conference play. And again, we'll talk about what that looks like as it was against opponents last year, but that's pretty much putting you in every game to potentially win or come close to winning if you're at least adding one more score to your season average.
Zeroing in on the red zone offense, Auburn was not very good in the red zone. As a matter of fact, a lot of scores that they found in conference play came from outside the red zone on big plays. They didn't lack for big plays, but you can't live there if you're an offense. You got to grind drives down into the red zone, Caesar, and you got to find a way to finish them off with touchdowns more so than field goals. They weren't able to do that. Not only were they not able to do that, but because of the injury to Alex McPherson, they found themselves in trouble just trying to kick basic field goals last year as well, too. It's going to be a combination of things that fixes this points per game thing for Hugh Freeze. Number one, Alex McPherson coming back might be worth 6 to 9 points per game for you if you're lucky, right? Just knowing that you have the confidence to kick it in other situations where you might punt, trying long field goals that you might not otherwise try, and just overall making field goals that were missed last year. He pointed to that in my one-on-one interview. There were a couple of games where if they could make a couple of kicks, you probably win those games. And then there is offensive play calling in the red zone. And that brings me to Jackson Arnold. Now, we've talked to Jackson Arnold to death so far this offseason. We will continue to talk him to death. But I think the confidence that they have in this young man's arm and the confidence that he has in his receivers is probably the biggest thing that's going to pay dividends in the red zone.
Because that offense is based upon a quarterback that can make the right decisions in key moments of the game, right? Hugh Freeze talks about having another coach on the field in the QB. And if Jackson Arnold is who this coaching staff believes he can be, then that gives you a guy who can at least think like Hugh Freeze in those moments in the red zone, knowing where to go with the football. And now when you look at this revamped wide receiver room, you have guys who can go up and get those 50-50 balls, or as we like to call them, the 80-20, because you have guys with the large catch radiuses. Now you get to utilize, obviously, Jackson Arnold's legs, but you also get to put the ball in places where those receivers can go get the ball. And those are things that Auburn has not been able to count on in full in recent years. So if you have a guy who can put it all together, like Jackson Arnold, who can see the field and know where to go in those key moments, that's going to improve what Auburn is able to do in the red zone. And you're going to begin to see a lot more success combined with Alex McPherson, who you mentioned, who's coming back, which, by the way, I'm so happy that man his health has improved and he's able to get back on the field. But yes, having him back, knowing that, yes, it's not an all or nothing here. Like if you aren't able to get 6, you have a very reliable kicker who can get you 3 in those moments. Let's go back to the drawing board and figure out how we can get 6 the next time we're here. At times last year, it seems like if Auburn doesn't get it in the end zone, we may not get anything, Mike. And so this year, you hope that that's not the case, as Alex McPherson is 100% and ready to do his thing, but also you have a much more improved red zone offensive attack.
Yeah, look, the other side of that coin is going to be pass protection in the red zone. So obviously much maligned. The O-line has been over the last 5 or 6 years. A lot of fans pointing to lack of protection for the QB as a reason why Auburn has been unable to find success on offense. They feel like they solved some things, bringing in Xavier Chaplin for Virginia Tech and Mason Murphy through the portal. Is it just a time thing? Give Jackson Arnold one more second to throw the ball, and you may see better results here, especially with these receivers. And if guys understand the concepts, know where the holes in the defense are, and know how to get to the spot where he wants to deliver the football, having a better offensive line that just a little bit better, because I don't want to crap on the guys that came before like they were terrible, but you've got guys returning on this offensive line. So yes, you've added pieces, but the core of this offensive line are guys that you returned from last year's line. We think they're going to be better this year, and so does Auburn.
And you had some guys playing out of position too, right? Like you had guys like Dylan Wade, who ended up having to go back to left tackle. You like him at the left guard, and it seems as though with guys like Xavier Chaplin coming in, that you can move Dylan Wade back inside to his more natural position, right? So that's one plus. You got guys playing more of their natural position this year in the offensive line. But I'm going to tell you something, Mike. some of the issues that we saw, yes, offensive line has to be better, but also too, some of the decision making behind that offensive line has to be a lot better. There were times, and Ike has done a very good job of doing this in his film review, where some of the blitzes just were not being picked up, right? By the QB. And then if Jackson Arnold can see and spot out those where the pressure is coming from, know where to go with the football, sometimes the defense makes the right call. Sometimes the defense sends more people than the offensive line can block. And understanding that and knowing where to go with the ball in key moments is going to be very vital, because, again, if you're showing that you are a threat on offense, teams are going to then begin to dial up blitzes and come attack you and to throw off your timing. And you're going to have to know what to do in those pressure moments, in those pressure situations.
Yeah, look, it's going to be really important for Auburn to be better on all fronts. So not only in pass protection, but they were pretty good in run blocking last year as well.
Yeah.
Jarquez Hunter was the second leading rusher in the league with 1,200 yards on the ground. A lot of people felt like he was underutilized last year, and that led to some of the offense struggles that they had. But if you see all this improvement, what does that mean for Auburn's schedule and their potential to win games? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors, our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Sweet I in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to the Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. My guy Steve Watkins helping keep the community fresh. And our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code REPORTER to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Look, I love the sleep gummies. I struggle with sleep, and I don't know how I would get to sleep sometimes without my CBD gummies from the Rogue Shop, therogueshop.com. Again, use code REPORTER to get 15% off that order. Also, our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights, and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Spring is here. Summer is on the way. You want to be outside making memories with your family around the grill, or overall just trying to get in shape. Either way, Golden's Cast Iron has you covered. Work out, grill out, chill out, or Golden's Cast Iron. Caesar, where does this thing have to land truly? And I want to talk about just in conference play, because that's the barometer by which Hugh Freeze, I think, ultimately is going to be measured. No disrespect to Baylor, but we expect them to beat Ball State, South Alabama, and Mercer. That's 3 wins on your schedule. You only won 5 football games last year. One of them was Texas A&M in 4 OTs. It felt like the Super Bowl. I can tell you I was down on the field. They rushed the field, and it was both exciting but kind of sad that that's where we're at as the program. Look, let's where do you need to land on this thing this year in terms of points per game and what that equates to in wins? As I mentioned before, if you're Auburn, if you scored 28 points last year in conference play, you beat Arkansas, you beat Oklahoma, you're neck and neck with Georgia in the fourth quarter, right? But I'll call that an L. You beat Missouri, you beat Vandy, and you possibly push Alabama to overtime. So at the very least, that's, 4 more wins on the schedule. And we're having a very different conversation about this football team that pushes them to 9 wins. And if you beat Alabama, you're in the playoff. I think that's what a lot of people who follow this program feel like this program is on the verge of being in the playoff conversation, not necessarily in the playoff, but about where South Carolina found themselves at the end of last season, going on a 6-game run to end their regular season. And, they might have been the hottest team in America at the end of last season, Caesar. Can Auburn be the hottest team in America to finish this season? Let's take a look at the schedule right quick before I let you give your piece here. Again, you open August 29th with Baylor. This is August 30th, but that game has been moved to Friday. So you open with Baylor, you get Ball State, South Alabama, and then you open SEC play against Oklahoma on the road, Texas A&M on the road, Georgia at home. If Auburn gets out of this stretch 4-2, I think you're looking pretty good because you've got a winnable stretch of Missouri at home, Arkansas on the road, Kentucky at home, Vanderbilt on the road, and Mercer before you hit the Iron Bowl. That is a potential, in my book, 5-game winning streak as we sit here right now, waiting on the Tigers to end your season. And then it could set up an epic Iron Bowl that you get at home, and you can give Kalen DeBoer his first taste of Auburn Jesus. So what can we do here, man? Like, what do you see with this schedule, and if Auburn can hit their points per game total numbers?
I think Auburn is due for having the least amount of drama on offense as possible. Right?
Okay.
Auburn has had a lot of drama and dysfunction on offense for quite some time, Mike. And even with some of the issues that Auburn had last year, this team averaged 19 points a game in conference play, right? And one of the things that we said it on the midweek reports, we said it on game day. If Auburn cannot score 21 points in a game against a conference opponent, you can forget about it. Right? Auburn's not giving itself a good chance of winning the games. I'm going to go a little bit above that and say if Auburn can average at least 24 points a game, what you're talking about being one of the hottest teams, 24 points has you in pretty much in every game.
Yeah,
just about this year, last year against opponents, and you would have won a good fair share of those games if you're able to do that. And again, we know that when you get into conference play, that scoreboard doesn't light up as much, right? Teams understand one another. The coaching is good. The defenses are good. You're not going to light them up the way you would a non-conference opponent. So if you're able to get in that 24, that sweet spot, somewhere between 24 and 28 points, obviously as many points as you can have, 28 will be amazing. But again, baby steps here. If you can begin to eradicate some of the dysfunction that Auburn has been prone to have on offense, and you begin to find yourself averaging 24 points a game against pretty competent SEC opposition, I like where Auburn stands in terms of how they finish the season. The over and under is 7.5 for Auburn. I like Auburn as an 8-win team this year. Obviously, if they win more, that's great. But if Auburn is able to be an 8-win team, you have to be around that 24 points per game, Mike, in my opinion. If you can't even get to 21, you can forget about it. It's a reason why Auburn went 5-7 this year, because they struggled miserably on offense. And that 19 points tells you there were certain games, the Vanderbilt game, you win that game. If you're averaging close to around 24 points, Auburn didn't even score but 7. So that there's certain games to where if you just show signs of life on offense, you're going to give yourself a chance to win and improve upon your win total.
There's no world where Auburn is scoring 7 points against the Vanderbilt. That game last year, it should be noted, was at home.
Yeah.
17-7 at home. Now, fortunately for them, Vanderbilt is not a daunting task as far as going on the road and trying to get a win. But the Commodores did take down Alabama last year, and Diego Pavia, the Hugh Freeze slayer, returns. So certainly there will be somewhat of a psychological game within the game that we see going on there with Vanderbilt. Again, looking at the rest of the schedule, it just looks so manageable when you look at what they have in front of them, that you think, hey, the absolute worst case should be 7-5. Hugh Freeze understands you got to be much more than just bowl eligible this year based on how the first 2 years have gone. So,
right.
He made some comments about being bowl eligible, but he did not intend to say we should only just be bowl eligible. You should make a really, really good bowl game. And you've got the schedule to do it. I wasn't able to get him to say that the schedule is easy. I don't want him to say that. But from a fan perspective, this is one of the easiest schedules we've seen Auburn have in quite some time, against some teams that are not clearly better than you. I'm not sure that Alabama even is clearly better than Auburn at this point. They're trending down from where Saban had them, as far as I'm concerned. Kalen DeBoer didn't show me anything that says he's pushing that program forward. As a matter of fact, he inherited the most talented team that any coach has ever inherited, and he took them and missed the playoffs in year one when they had a clear path. So if you're Hugh Freeze, there's an opening here in conference with the elimination of divisions. You get a chance to get on a rotation where you get a schedule like this, a Georgia type schedule. And this is not a knock to Georgia. They're extremely talented, but let's be honest, they've had some of the easier schedules that we've seen in college football over the last couple of years. Now, they've won the easy ones and the hard ones, so kudos to them. But Auburn gets a chance to have that schedule, and we'll see what they can do with it. Before we get out of here, I do want to talk about the talent at wide receiver and what we expect there. Now, we talked about Jackson Arnold needing to move things forward, but certainly this wide receiver core is going to have to continue to develop. Not only are they going to have to continue to develop, Caesar, but they're going to have to be one of the better units in the SEC, if not the nation, if Hugh Freeze is going to take this offense where it needs to go. I think Cam Coleman does enough to make himself a Heisman candidate going into 2026. What do you think about young Cam Coleman and this wide receiver core that he's leading?
I liked how Auburn began to use him towards the end of last year. And I hope that they're able to pick up where they left off in 2026 with him, because we begin to see, even though we knew that he had the talent, you can't show the talent if you don't get the ball thrown your way. So they're going to have to figure out how to get the ball to Cam Coleman early and often this year to get him involved, but to also create opportunities for other guys in this receiving core, because it's not just Cam Coleman that's heading up this lineup. You brought in Eric Singleton Jr. From Georgia Tech, and I see them using him all over the field. But you already had a guy on the roster who kind of served their purpose in Malcolm Simmons. So I'm curious to see how Auburn lines up. I expect to see a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. We did at times last year see some 5 wide receiver sets, Mike G, and I'm curious to see if we see more of that this year. Again, if you have a QB, going back to Jackson Arnold, one of the issues that we saw Auburn Mike, is that with Auburn at the QB position, they weren't able to see the whole field. And at times it seems as though the QB had already predetermined where he was going to go with the football. Well, if you have guys like a Perry Thompson, like a Malcolm Simmons, a Cam Coleman, and Eric Singleton, who are all out there, who are threats to really punish defenses in the secondary, you need a QB who doesn't necessarily have his mind made up pre-snap where he's going with the ball. He's letting the play and letting things come to him and giving the ball to the right guy at the right time. And if you're able to do that, again, you're talking about a major step forward in this offense. As talented as these receivers are, Mike, they can't throw the ball to themselves. So having a QB who can see the football field and to be able to see what defenses are doing and attack them. And we believe that that's something that Jackson Arnold can do. Again, this is a former 5-star QB, and Hugh Freeze believes that he's still as every bit of the 5-star he was coming out of high school. If he can live up to that, Mike, and get the balls in the hands of these playmakers, you're going to see this Auburn passing attack take a major step forward. And guys like Cam Coleman will have the Heisman hype going into next season. And you will see a wide receiver room get the respect that schools like an LSU or Ohio State has.
Yeah, plus 1,500 yards on the top end. I think that's the kind of potential that Cam Coleman has. That would be historic, might be the best receiving single season receiving performance we've seen ever on the Plains. But it's exciting to have a guy like this and have a coach who has a propensity to throw the ball enough for him to have that sort of season. So I'm looking for Cam Coleman to make that jump, being a 1,000-yard receiver at the end of this season, and then getting that Heisman hype headed into 2026 with a quarterback returning who will be one of the best in the country and a passing game that will remain mostly intact. It's going to be fun to watch. Always fun to talk Auburn football with my guy, C-Dub. Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you're watching this and you're in the comments, do us a favor. Smash that super thanks button. We appreciate you guys for helping support the work that we're doing here. Help us keep that going by throwing us a little super thanks there. We'll be back at you guys tomorrow. Guys, if you like what you see, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagles.